Good evening, everyone. Good evening, and welcome back to another PorscheCooled Podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things Porsche. Today, we've got a Porsche owner stories again, and we have a really special guest. We have James here from Autoamateur. If you don't know who James is from Autoamateur, well, you should check out his YouTube channel. I will do a proper intro in a second, and we'll get James on the line and start talking about his passion. But if there's one person who's heavily immersed in Porsches, it's James. He's owned 3 generations of 911s. One generation, he's even owned 2 of that same generation. So he's got a lot to talk about. I'm not going to do a huge intro. This is the PorscheCooled Stories. This is number 2, and let's get James on the line on Zoom. James is in the Twin Cities. I think James is in Minneapolis. I should know this, shouldn't I? I'm going to ask him. I always forget. Minnesota, Minneapolis, Twin Cities. Let me get James on the line on Zoom, and we'll start talking all things Porsche. Okay, welcome back, everyone. So we're doing this by Zoom again. Like I said, we've got James all the way from Minneapolis in the USA. Just a little bit about James before we start chatting. James is Autoamateur. James has a YouTube channel. He has a podcast. He writes for Total 911 magazine. He really is the Porsche dream. He's if you want to get engrossed in Porsche, then James is the person to talk to because he's got lots of stories. And that's what this episode is all about. Every Porsche tells a different story, and each owner has a story to tell, and that's what the PorscheCooled Stories, the PorscheCooled Podcast Stories are all about. So like I said, James is coming. James is an Englishman. He used to be an Englishman in New York, I think. And now he's an Englishman in Minneapolis.
That's right.
Good evening, James.
Good evening. Thanks for having me on, Michael. I'm really flattered. And now you put me on the spot because that was a great introduction.
Was it? I always stutter and stumble, but that's part of the fun of it, James.
I love that. It's awesome. Thank you for having me on.
I'm glad you're here because as I was thinking about this podcast before you came online, and I was thinking, James has got so much to tell. How am I going to fit it all into 1 hour or less than an hour? I wasn't sure how much time you had, but you said you've got about an hour. So there's a lot to talk about. But I always say these podcasts in general in the podcast, people don't assume that people know who you are. So I thought the best way to start it, and I could do it, but I think it's probably best if you do,
Sure.
an introduction to who you are and what you're doing and what Porsches you own at the moment.
Well, my name is James. I'm from Liverpool, England originally. I've been in the US on and off for about 15 years, but full-time for about 10 now. I met my wife, Ruthie, in New York City. I was doing a job there, and she is an actress, so she was acting, singing, dancing, working out there, living the Broadway dream. Porsche has always been a passion of mine. From as far back as I can remember, whether it was seeing, the occasional 911 driving around Merseyside or movies like, Bad Boys, Will Smith with his beautiful black turbo. I mean, seeing that rock up at the beginning of the movie, I was like, that's what I want.
Yeah, the one we all wanted, that's for sure.
Right. So it's always been a dream. It wasn't until I actually sat in a 911 in my late 30s. I'm now in my early 40s. So I've only been as passionate about Porsches as I am now for the past sort of 4 or 5 years. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'6", 6'7" almost.
Yeah.
I'm well built is the polite way to say it.
Yeah.
I was just terrified. This car, this thing that I always wanted to have, always wanted to enjoy. What if I sit in it and I won't be able to fit in it? It's like the dream is just shattered. My wife eventually pushed me into it and said, look, you talk about 911s all the time. We're now living in Minneapolis instead of New York. You want a car, why not get a Porsche? And this just happened to be, coincidentally, about 2 months before we found out my wife was pregnant with our first son, Luke. So I think if this conversation had happened a couple of months later and she had been pregnant, no way would I have been driving
true.
around.
That wouldn't happen.
Yeah. But in 5 years, I've had 4 911s.
Yeah, and I think that's a great story for everyone because some people haven't even owned one 911, and I'm guessing you get messages like me through YouTube and through Instagram of people wanting to buy a 911 and asking for advice. And I think that's what, I think if you haven't been to James's channel, if you haven't been to Autoamateur, you should check it out because honestly, over the past, I think it's 3 years, James, is it?
Yeah, going on 4 now, actually. Yeah.
So for the last 4 years, James has really, really been giving everyone a glimpse into his Porsche journey, and he is, like I said, he's fully immersed in it. There's a lot of videos there. James is much handier than than what I am. I don't work on my car, but James is very good at it, and people enjoy those videos. You can see that by the views and by the subscribers. And like I said, James, as he mentioned just briefly then, he's owned 3 911s, 3 generations, right, James?
Yeah.
So 996, 997, 991, which is...
And now a 996 again.
Yeah, not trying to show off, but you have owned 3 generations. And another 996, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not... I don't think it would be showing off. I think it's just demonstrating the slight screw that I've got loose.
I actually... I mean, I guess we're getting into the background and whatever like that, but I watched one of your videos yesterday, actually. I watched one of your very early videos, and I think it was titled How to Choose Your Porsche. I think it was your second video or third video.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was the first 911 you bought, which was a Carrera 4. Is that correct? Do you want to tell everyone about that car, the first car, and why you bought that 996? Was there a reason why you chose the 996, or was it an impulse buy, or...
I think primarily it was an impulse buy, and the only sort of parameters I put around the purchase was the budget, frankly. At that point in time, the 911 to me was just a 911. I didn't know the ins and outs. I knew that something had happened around the time of the 996 coming out, and there was a style change, and there was a change to the production process, and there was a major transformation of the engine, and I was aware of the difference between the air-cooled and the water-cooled cars. But, there being 2 generations of 996 or 2, sub-generations, you know what I mean. A 996 first and second generation, 2 997s and so on. I just looked for a car that I could afford with the right kind of mileage and the color I liked. And I found one in California, and I happened to be doing a job out there at the time. So after my wife pushed me to... sit in a dealership 911, which was a seal grey first generation 991, which at the time had only just been released, I think.
Right.
Maybe it was a couple of years into the process, into the generation. But here was the seal grey 911, just like the one I set in the dealership as far as I was concerned. I showed up. It was in my price range. I was going to be there for a couple of days. I took it for a test drive, ended up buying it, and instead of flying home, I drove home.
That's a good idea.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, road trip of my life, actually. And not to say that it's been downhill since day one, but driving back through California, Nevada, the desert, the mountains of Utah, Wyoming, oh my goodness, it was incredible.
What a great drive.
Yeah, really fantastic.
What a great drive. So that was the first one, right? So you had the Carrera 4, Seal Grey, Cabriolet, right?
That's right, yes. And
Cabriolet with a hardtop, but you had the hardtop version.
Yeah,
or hardtop option.
That's right. It came with a hardtop, and I like that because at the time I thought, well, maybe I'll like a cabriolet. I do like the coupe. This gives me the best of both worlds. It was awful, frankly. I don't think. Oh yeah, it was awful.
Really?
I will. First off, I'll never own a cabriolet ever again. Even if
I was
going to,
I was going to ask you that question because I think the podcast last week I was talking to Steve about it, and I know Nick in the UK laughed at me when I said it was coming back, but I think cabriolets are coming back. I think cabriolets have been underrated, and I think people are the trend of cabriolet is starting. And the reason why I think this, James, is because the Porsche Museum, and I don't know whether you saw that photo, it has a silver 996 cabriolet with the hard top, similar to what you owned, with a roof racks on the roof and a surfboard. And that was on display in the Porsche Museum, and it's a new display, I think. So I think Porsche are onto it. I think this cabriolet thing, maybe you're before your time, you're ahead of your time. It's happening.
I don't know. I think there have been too many cabs produced and too many people driving around in them. I mean, all right, the idea of a convertible sports car, that sounds like the luxury living the dream. Practically, it is such a pain in the arse.
Yeah.
Especially with the hardtop. I think I tried to remove that myself once or twice. The first time I did it, I nearly killed myself. The second time I did it, I scraped up the back of my car. So at that point, if I ever wanted to take the hardtop off, I needed my wife or someone to help me do it. So I just left it on.
That's a funny thing though, because when you see those 996s for sale with the hardtop in the ads, they've got them on the stand and they've got the wheels on the stand, and it's a custom stand for that top. And it looks so light and it looks so easy. You just put your top on when you need it and take it off. But I watched that video of yours and you were saying that you couldn't actually take the top off by yourself.
Forget it. And also, I mean, we talk in the US about the need for $1 trillion investment in the infrastructure, and that's probably underestimating what's required to fix the roads and the bridges. In the state of Minnesota, we have some pretty beautiful roads and we have some terrible roads. And when you drive around in a car like a 911 for even just a couple of months, you start picking up the squeaks. And when you've got a hard top, which is screwed into place, just in two places, that thing was rattling and squeaking all the time. I ended up hating it.
So not only did you buy a Cabriolet as your first 911, you bought a four-wheel drive 911, and you bought an automatic 911.
I did.
Now, was that the decision? I mean, I don't know how. Did you own that car for a year or less than a year?
I had that car for just over a year. I think I picked it up as the snow was retreating in like the March or the April time, and then I sold it the following year in the September.
And then you bought, after the 996...
My 997.
The 997.
Oh, Michael, I miss that 997 so much. It was a jet black metallic, 2006, first generation 997, manual with the sand beige interior, which isn't to everyone's taste, but to me, the sand beige against the black. Yeah. Oh, it was gorgeous. It was so nice. And I do miss that car.
I have to say I'm getting used to the beige interiors being in the Middle East, because a lot of 911s, a lot of cars there have the beige with the black or the beige with the red. But I think it's a good, it works well. It works well, especially in the 997, in the old air cools. The tan interior is pretty special.
Yeah.
So when you bought that car, you must have noticed a huge difference in the driving experience, right? From the cab, from the weight in the back of the cab and the four-wheel drive of the cab to the 997. It must have felt like a completely different car.
It did. It really did. Even though, generally speaking, the 996 and the 997 are very similar, almost identical cars in many ways, at least the first generation 997 and the second generation 996. The second generation 996 still had that sort of very raw, metallic kind of analog feel. I felt every single bump and imperfection in the road in a good way. I could feel the sort of hydraulics working and the mechanisms working as you turn the wheel, and the wheels turn as well. The 997, I still had that kind of analog feel, but I think the transmission was smoother. Having owned that Tiptronic automatic transmission, I didn't like it at the time, and then I switched to manual, and now I'm in the PDK. I would never go near another Tiptronic transmission again in a 911. Just poor. I just wasn't very good at all. But yeah, I felt like the 997 somehow felt lighter, slicker, easier to drive, more exciting, and I felt like I could do something stupid in a two-wheel rear-wheel drive as opposed to a four-wheel drive.
Yeah. I mean, it was a great car. I mean, you did some great things to it. You really did. I mean, I always enjoyed those videos, probably because I have the 997 as well and still do. And that's where we connected, I guess, when you had your 997 around that time. I think that's when we first started chatting, which is quite a few years ago now. Yeah.
And I think you got your 997 a couple of months before I did, maybe, because I was watching your journey and I was thinking, wow, I like that car.
Yeah, I got mine in beginning of 2017, and I think you bought yours in 2017, didn't you?
In the summer, yeah. So you had sort of at least 6 months on me and maybe half a dozen videos or so.
Right.
And the more I watched your videos, the more I started to get sort of itchy feet with my 996.
Yeah.
I thought, I like those headlights. I want the lobster claws.
Yeah. But then you came back to the 996, which we'll get onto, which is another interesting twist, let's say, twist in your story. So after the 997, you had, you did many videos on your channel. You did many mods. The main mods you put the body kit on, right? You did exhaust mods. I can't even remember half the things you did to that one.
Yeah, I did. I went through this. I went through the winter essentially of 2018. I think it was 2017 to 2018, doing all of these mods. We just had Luke, my eldest, who's now 3.5, and he he needed a lot of attention. The only time I could escape was into the garage. I didn't feel like I could leave the house. So yeah, one project after the other. I did the front aero kit, which was a factory component. I did a replica rear GT3 bumper, or spoiler, sorry, deck lid, which was from Olivier Jacquemond, who's been designing Porsche body kit parts for about 25 years.
That's right. I remember.
And that part was fantastic. You see the Duraflex stuff on eBay, and it's terrible. This part was almost like factory. It was fantastic. I had the Fister mufflers on after your recommendation.
Yep. Love the Fister.
I contacted FD Motorsports and got to speak to Darren, and I was like, I want what Michael Bath's got. And he laughed.
Yeah, I spoke to him about that time when I got it installed. He's a nice guy. He's a nice guy, Darren.
Yeah, and he's helped me out with the Project 996. He very kindly donated a set of mufflers to the project.
Oh, really? Wow.
In exchange for some videos and some promotional stuff. But I was talking him through my build budget and my vision for the car, and he was like, James, you've had these from me before. A bunch of people have seen your videos and have come and bought mufflers from me. I'd like to donate this and be part of the journey. I thought, fantastic.
Great, fantastic. Yeah.
Really nice guy.
You probably still get it, and I still get it. I mean, a lot of the people that contact me, they ask me about the Fisters. It's the main thing. Are they any good? Should I get them? And most people do end up getting them. And they ask me about the lobster claws, the color of the lobster claws, and who did those. That's probably the two. I guess that's the two things. And then the stripe is like the third thing. But most people, it's really the sound and then the wheels are the two most important things. And I think when we buy a 911, I think you having owned 4 now, and me only having owned 1. But I think the first thing that you think about is the sound. You know what I mean? You think about the sound and you think about the wheels. That's kind of where you start, isn't it? That's the base. Especially when you have a mechanically sound 911. That's the base where you start, because that makes the biggest impact to your experience, I guess.
Yeah, I would agree. And the only thing I might add to that from a purely shallow aesthetic sort of perspective is the 911 silhouette to me is synonymous with the ultimate sports car. And that's another reason why I don't like the Cabriolet, because certainly up until the second generation 991, it broke up the silhouette. You didn't quite get the proper silhouette.
Yeah, the 964s are a bit clunky. There's a guy on Instagram in Thailand. He's an architect, I think. It's called Corn Brown Houses. I don't know whether you've seen that Instagram. And he's got quite a lot of 911s. He's got quite a lot of cars, actually. And he just bought a white 964 Cabriolet. And for some reason in the photos, it looks pretty cool. But when you see a close-up of that back mechanism, it's very clunky and very chunky, and it's not... it's not integrated. It's. I don't know if I could live with that. I mean, it's good to see it in the picture, but then you see it closer up and you think, I'm not so sure. And you can see the metal structure that supports it. And
don't like that.
Not nice. Not nice.
And that was the same with the 996. And let's not forget things like bird poop, which ruin the fabric.
Yes.
Even if you get to it pretty quickly, and so you then have a imperfection on top of the car, which you really can't get rid of.
But would you buy a Targa?
Yes, I think I would. Assuming it was like a GTS with a bit more oomph. My friend Chris, who works at Porsche Minneapolis, he had the second generation 991 Targa. Looked beautiful. The mechanism was phenomenal. Just the way that car works is just a miracle of engineering. It's fantastic, but it's really heavy.
It's very, very heavy, yeah.
Yeah, and his C2 engine in there, even with the turbocharged second generation 991 engine, it really didn't do a lot for the driving experience. So if I was going to go Targa, I'd want some extra horsepower under the deck lid. Yeah,
I think when you see people review the Targa, I was watching, it's probably the Smoking Tire, I think, possibly the Smoking Tire, Matt Farah, and he was saying, for the extra money and the extra weight, really, if you want an open-top experience, you should get the Cabriolet, because the Cabriolet is it's cheaper, it's lighter, the Targa's actually heavier, and he thought it just felt better on the road. But that's the main thing with the Targa. I mean, it looks beautiful. The Targa is just such a beautiful looking 911. I mean, I love the look of it. It only comes in Carrera 4 though, doesn't it? I think in Australia it only comes in 4-wheel drive. It doesn't come in 2-wheel in Australia.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Maybe that's a traction.
Say for sure.
Traction.
I have heard that.
Yeah, traction weight thing or something. All right, so 997. That was a lot of stuff going on. Then you bought 2 years. You had the 997, I think, around about, and then you bought the 991. Spur of the moment. 1 minute there's a 997 in the video. The next minute James has bought a 991.
Yeah,
James?
What was I doing? What was I thinking? And funnily enough, I'm still in touch with the guy who bought my 997, and he sends me pictures of it every now and again. And I've said to him, if you're ever going to sell it back to me. But
did he change anything? Sorry to interrupt. Did he actually change anything that you'd put on? Did he take any of the mods off, or did he leave everything on?
He left everything on apart from the wheels. Just recently, he put on some HREs, I think, and took off the lobsters. And
really?
I have to admit, as much as I like those lobsters, the wheels he put on there are spectacular. They really transform the car.
Right.
I'll try and find a photo. I think he sent me a photo recently, and I sob into my pillow at night.
So 991.1 Carrera, 2013 is it? 2013 model, is that right?
It's a 2013. Yeah, it's. I think it actually might hold the record in North America for the highest mileage on a 991. Really? Yeah, it's now got 101,000 miles. Somebody did a poll on the 991 enthusiast Facebook group a couple of weeks ago, and dozens and dozens of people have been saying, I've got 30k, 40k, 30k, 20k. Some guy's got 3,000 miles, and it's a 2013. I mean, that's criminal. And there I am with over 100,000 miles, and no one's beaten it yet. So I'm going to unofficially claim that record until somebody responds.
So when you bought it, it had how many miles on it, James?
About 92.
92. And that didn't deter you from buying it? You didn't have a problem with it being a high mileage car? It didn't impact your decision?
No, mileage doesn't really bother me too much when we think about a quality sports car like a 911. I've got a couple of friends that have got 996s with, the dreaded IMS issues and all of that palaver with over 400,000 miles on. 350,000 miles, 300,000 miles. I think if you really care loads about the resale value, yes, you should worry about mileage. If you're buying at the very top end of your budget and you're sort of breaking the bank to buy the car, and you're not factoring in the amount of money you need to spend on maintenance every year, sure, get a low mileage car because it's less that's going to go wrong and your maintenance costs are going to be a little less. But that really didn't put me off at all. I got a pre-purchase inspection. I test drove it myself in California before I picked it up. I didn't drive it home this time. But it had everything I wanted. And the more I look at the 991 market, there are so many people that buy what I call the Bobby Basic Carrera.
Yeah.
They go for the standard black interior. They go for the cheaper, crappier looking steering wheel. You name it, they sort of cheap out just so they can get the newer generation. And maybe they're lease cars. I don't know what they are, but the one that I bought, it had the GTS steering wheel. It had Sports Plus. It had Sports Chrono. It had the ventilated seats. I mean, that's something these days I don't want to live without.
Yeah, so basically that car had... They're all the great options, right? The only option that was missing was the sports exhaust. But then the Porsche sports exhaust, as good as it is, you can do an aftermarket and you can fix it up. But the Sport Plus button that you have and the wheel and everything, that's the most important to me. That's sort of options I don't say walk away from a car if it doesn't have the right options, but when it comes to that steering wheel, how yours is spec'd and, the button and all that, I think, you have to have... what am I trying to say? I don't even know what I'm trying to say, James. You have to...
the right collection of options that are going to break the bank to fix.
Yeah, basically. Because it's hard for people. I mean, people listen to our podcast and watch our YouTube channel and they haven't bought a 911. So everyone's looking for insight into what they should buy. Should I hang up? Should I hold out and get a low mileage, fully optioned 911? Or should I get something that's high mileage that has maybe 3 of the 4 or 5 options that I want? And look at our friend Nick Murray that bought his 993 Cabriolet. I mean, that's hilarious because everything he wanted, the car doesn't have, except it being a 993 and a manual.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
We all compromise, but how much do you want to compromise, I guess?
That's right. And I feel like my 991 was the first time I made a relatively informed decision about my 911 purchase, even though it was still... I wouldn't say it was an impulse purchase this time. The 996 was. 997 was an impulse trade. I traded it in. My 996 for the 7 just drove away the same day with a different car. It was a local dealership, local, 5-hour drive away in Chicago. But the 991 I researched to death, and the only option I didn't get that I wanted was the Porsche Sports exhaust. But I knew I was going to modify the exhaust anyway, so it really didn't bother me. And I can't, 996, 997, I can't say enough good things about the Fister mufflers. For the 991, there was only going to be one option for me, and that was the Soul Performance valved exhaust, because I've heard it on several other 991s, and it is just, it's electric. It's the favorite. It's the thing I love the most about my 991, short of the PDK.
Okay. See, I'm not convinced about the Soul Performance exhaust.
Okay.
And I might have said this in a previous podcast that I did here. I'm not completely convinced. I think it sounds good, but I don't know when you did that comparison with the GT3 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's just the GT3 engine. I just thought that the Porsche sports exhaust sounded better.
I think you have to drive the car. So I've had a lot of people have commented along similar lines for that GT3 comparison video I did. And admittedly, just listening to the car on the video, I think in many respects, the GT3 sounds more like a Porsche, more like the flat six engine, and it's more sort of classically Porsche. But
yes,
the driving experience with my Soul Performance exhaust with the PDK transmission in sports mode compared to the GT3 was very different. Every time you change gear in the GT3, you feel the power and you're pushed into your seat, but you don't really get much responsiveness. You don't really get a lot of feedback from the exhaust.
Right.
You hear it get louder, but you don't really get much interaction with it. With the Soul Performance exhaust, and of course some of this is just purely to do with the exhaust itself and not the engine, when I go from gear to gear and I'm accelerating, I get this sort of rip, crack, and it sort of makes my heart jump out of my chest. It completely transforms my car. I just can't get enough of it.
It's not too loud inside the cabin? You don't find it? No. It doesn't drone, it doesn't do anything like that? It's not overbearing?
The first generation of the Soul Performance valved exhaust, there were a few people that thought that it did have a little bit of a drone. Last year they came out with the second iteration of the same product, and they spent a lot of time perfecting the drone tubes, the anti-resonators, I think they're called, or the resonance tubes. There is zero drone. Even when I'm sports plussing and I'm flooring it, and I now have the headers from Soul Performance, I'm in the middle of trying to make that comparison video, pre-headers and post-headers. No drone. Even driving around at high speed on the highway. I drove a GT3 RS the other day.
Yeah, wow.
My friend AJ, who runs Eurocharged, I installed a CarPlay CarPlay device for him and a backup cam into the GT3 RS he bought about a couple of months ago. I drove that home to where I live, just south of the cities, to pick up a tool I forgot. Going home and coming back, I had about 40 minutes in the GT3 RS. I couldn't wait to get out of it by the time I got to the end. It was giving me a headache. It was droning. Oh my goodness, yeah.
The suspension, the noise, everything.
The noise. Primarily the noise.
The noise.
It was just too loud. Way too loud.
Wow. And Soul Performance, they've got history with other brands, haven't they? What's their background? Are they Fab Speed, or were they ex-Fab Speed or ex?
There are one or two guys, I think, in the company that are ex-Fab Speed.
Right.
If it's anything like the industry I work in, it's the exhaust industry is probably a very small place, and I imagine people, move around company to company, job to job.
Yeah.
But it's not like a whole bunch of people left Fab Speed and set up Soul. I think there were just a couple of people there that have history.
But experienced people, experienced exhaust type.
Correct.
People.
Yeah.
Okay, what's next? Okay, what's happening now? Let's talk about this crazy passion of yours. Let's talk about what you've been doing. So the 991, you've done a lot of mods to that. It seems like you're always adding something. I don't know how you keep finding things to add, but you seem to always find something to add. There's always a new video of you adding something to your car.
I know.
I don't know what your wife thinks about all of this, but I'm sure it's very amusing to her.
She's got a motto which has made it onto an Autoamateur t-shirt. Which
that's right.
It's better than hookers and blow.
True. So tell the listeners, just in case they don't know, tell people about your 991 and what you've actually the key things, James, what you've done, what you've done to it so far. And I know you're going to change some of these things, and I want to talk about that as well. But I guess the major things you've done.
Well, one of my guiding principles when I bought the 997 and did the mods has sort of transcended across into the 991, which is, short of things like the exhaust, I want to keep it sort of true to the brand. So where I put in the aftermarket head unit into my 997, which I just hated almost from day one, I've kept the stock PCM. I have Porsche wheels. I have Porsche parts. So the only thing I've broken that guiding principle on is the exhaust. But I really haven't done too much to it. I've done a lot of maintenance. So I've done the brakes, I've done the air filters, I've done oil changes, I've flushed the brake fluid, I've replaced the battery. I put a slightly different lower lip front spoiler on the bumper from Suncoast Parts, but that's Porsche OEM. It's the slightly sportier lip, which changes the front of the fascia without going full aero kit. So I quite like that minor mod.
Right.
But the biggest thing I've done, though, the exhaust, of course, it's been the wrap, the Miami blue, Mexico blue wrap.
Yeah, so that's been 6 months or so, right, since you put that wrap on? Roundabout?
That's right, yeah. It went on in February, and I think if I wasn't sort of so preoccupied with a few other things, it would have come off by now.
Yeah, I think that's my mindset about wraps. I think I like the idea of them, but I think if I put one on, I think I'd last about 6 weeks. I think I'd last a lot less than you. I think I'd have to take it off.
Yeah.
I actually, when you watch James's video on his channel on Autoamateur on YouTube, when you watch that video where you first pick up your 991, it really is a great color. I still think that's one of the best 991.1 colors. That gray, I don't know the true name for it. What's the name of that color?
It's the A-gate or the R-gate gray.
Oh, it's Argo gray. It's a great color, James, and you see it. And I think my problem with wraps in general is they don't have any reflection. They don't have any depth. And you don't actually get to see the curves of the 911, those iconic curves that we all love. You miss some of it when there's a wrap on it. And even if I know the trend at the moment is people are putting, matte PPF wraps on there to make their car look matte, protects it, and they put the matte. I don't know. I think it looks a bit cheesy. And I think, once again, if you don't have the reflection, you don't have those lines, it just doesn't look right. And I can understand that you would want to remove it.
Yeah. I'm in two minds about it. I think at the time of putting the wrap on, I'd sort of reached the natural end of the changes I wanted to make to the 991. I had the exhaust on, the valve exhaust. I had the PSE button. I changed the color of the clock face. I'd done a few things like that. And at the time, I was thinking seriously about either going back to a 997 or switching up to a different 991, maybe like a GTS, maybe a second generation 991 with a turbocharged engine. And I think the wrap was a good excuse to just shake it up and change things up. Having owned a seal grey 911, a black 911, and then a grey 911, I figured I want something different.
Blue is a great color in a 911. I thought it was a great color choice. I mean, it is a great color, that Mexico blue, Miami blue, Riviera. I think Riviera blue is my favorite. I know one's a little bit darker than the others. I'm not sure which one's darker, Mexico or Riviera, but they're all great blues. And I remember when the GT3 came out, the GT3 991.2, and people were getting their PTS colors. And you'd see them on Instagram, and some of those blues just looked, fantastic. Not so much the Miami, the other two colors, the PTS colors, Riviera and Mexico, which were great colors.
Yeah.
How is the wrap, though? How does it actually hold up, though? Is there a lot of nicks and chips in it? Does it actually hold up okay, or not so much?
Generally speaking, it's held up really well. So I have maybe one or two rock chips, one or two little nips here and there, which you can't really see. The problem I've found is around the edges where the wrap finishes and the body starts, it started to peel back in a couple of places. I mean, high touch areas like the driver's door handle.
Right.
That's going to need to be redone. I had a rock chip in the front of the by one of the air vents on the passenger side of the front of the car,
right,
which with wind and rain, etc., is now expanded into a big bubble. So that the whole front bumper is going to need to be redone. And the place I got the job done, Print Lab Wraps in southern Minneapolis, Lakeville area, I think it is. They stand by their work. And anytime you have any problem, whether it's a nick or a chip, or you think the color's fading or what have you, they'll fix it for you for free. No problem. It's not like I need to, dump a load of money back in to bring it back up to what it was. But every time you do that, it's an hour to get there. They're going to have the car for a couple of days. I think I've been in once to have it touched up. It needs to go in for another couple of days to be touched up again. I just don't want to be without the car for a few days every couple of months.
So what's the decision though? Are you going to take it off?
I am going to take it off. It's just a question of when. I think I'm probably going to wait for the first snowfall to hit here in the Twin Cities, which is probably going to be around end of November, Thanksgiving time. But that's going to be an interesting video. I'm going to time delay it.
That's going to take a while to take that wrap off, though, right? Because it was put on very well, wasn't it? Everything was fully covered. You open the doors, it's blue. It's not grey, right? So it's done properly.
Oh yes, yeah, very very professional job. But I think it's going to be really satisfying. You know, it's like pulling off the Band-Aid and you seeing it peel back, and then you get that snap.
Honestly, it'd be like having a new car again. It'd be like having a new 911. You'll realize how much you love that color, the agate gray, when you take it off.
I think so. So I'm at a crossroads again. Do I take the wrap off and scrub it up and get it polished and paint corrected and sell it? Or do I go for a second wave of mods? And I'm leaning towards a second wave of mods.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Look, you get lonely here in the Twin Cities during the winter. There's not a lot to do.
You've got your new room downstairs that you've been renovating. You can sit down there now. You don't have to do mods every day. You can just sit down and relax.
No, I'm a fidgeter.
Before we go off the 991, which is your current car, one of your current cars, because you actually have two cars, which some people know, some people won't know about. But we'll get to that in a second. But on the 991, I think James has a website called Autoamateur.com, and James has, I think, a couple of things on there which are really popular with 991 owners. Right? It's the Joy Auto CarPlay, which you are an official installer of, apparently, in the US.
Officially unofficial, yeah.
Joy Auto and your dials, right? Your dials for the chrono, for the Sport Chrono.
Sports chrono dials, yeah.
So the Sport Chrono dials come in how many colors? Lots of colors, right?
We got about a dozen colors. Yeah, I've tried to paint match as many as possible with Porsche OEM colors.
Okay.
So, all of the ones you'd expect, like Guards Red, Carmine Red, Speed Yellow, etc., to the sort of more exotic Lizard Greens and Lava Orange.
Right, right. Yeah, well, I was talking in a podcast that I recorded early today with Steve about the PCM in the 997. And I mentioned about how you do the 991. And I think it's lucky for people that own a 991 because the screen is actually okay. It's got Bluetooth. It's actually it's a lot more modern, as we know, than the 997. Yeah. And the fact that you have that sort of mod that you can just add on, and then all of a sudden you have CarPlay. Do you have Android Auto as well, or is it just CarPlay?
So the Joy Auto unit gives you wireless CarPlay, and it gives you wired Android mirror. So you can make it work with Android, but it has to be connected via a USB cable through the glove box.
Okay, but that's a great option for 991 owners, isn't it? That mod, and not that expensive either. Quite cheap. That's
right. You pick them up for around $350, $400, depending on which model you have, whether you got PCM 3.1 or PCM 4.0. Whether and they work for 911s, Caymans, Boxsters, Macans, Cayennes. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So 991, and then you go out with two mates, the three of you, and you find this 996, which I read your comments when you bought it. People thought it was a bit dirty, it was a bit rough.
Yeah, it was.
What made you decide on that car? So tell everyone about that car. I mean, it's a 2002, is it, or 2003?
Good question. I forget now. It's a second generation 996. I think it's 2002.
Yeah, it's got the white headlights, right? It doesn't have the amber proper fried eggs. It's got the slightly newer headlights. So it's a 0.2 996.
It is a 0.2 996, yeah, which was 2002 and later, I think, if I remember correctly.
So you bought this car, and you've been doing videos on your channel about it, Project 996, for the people that haven't seen it. There's a lot of videos about that car and things James has done. There's a couple of things that I really like, and we haven't seen it yet because it's not finished. And I know other people have actually said this to me. They said, "What's happening with James and his Project 996? What's the color? Where is it? Why hasn't there been any videos about it?" And I know you did an update on your channel, but what's happening with the 996, James?
Well, it's getting painted right now. and we had a couple of hiccups just with silly season. It's the summer, and here in the Twin Cities it gets awfully humid, which also can slow down body shops work because you're painting cars in extremely humid weather. You don't always get the best results. So the shop we chose, Otto's body shop in Bloomington, just south of Minneapolis. Great shop. They specialize in a lot of different brands, particularly European cars. They're really busy. We're in the humid season, and it's been taking a while to try and lock down the exact shade of blue that we wanted to do the car.
Yeah. So when you announced it was barley blue, barley blue, I actually looked up the original colors, the original air-cooled colors, because it's one of the old 356, 911, 65 colors, right? It's an original color. And I know from my 912 searching and my 912 obsession at the moment, that those colors, when you paint them and people get the car repainted, like the sand beige and the old 911s and 912s, is they can't really match the color of the paints because of the paints made in that era are completely different to the paints made now. And so the colors never really match up properly. Like the tangerine never really matches the proper tangerine of the original 60s cars. Right. Is that the problem you had with the barley blue?
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So the body shop couldn't get a formula from Porsche that would translate into the modern paint codes that they have today. So you got a couple of choices. You either print off a close approximation from a photo, or you find an original paint sample, hard copy off a car or an actual car, and they try their best to match it. It's never going to be perfect, but they get really close. So unfortunately, we don't have any barley blue cars that we found in the Twin City areas that we can paint match from. And we tried our best from several different high-resolution photos, but to me, the color that we got from the first paint sample had a bit of a purple flair to it. And as much as I quite like the purple color, and now I've adopted the Minnesota Vikings as my NFL team, I've got to like purple. I didn't want a purple 996, and I didn't want people to be constantly asking me what color it was, because people have said it looks navy, it looks black, it looks purple. That just sounds like a nightmare to me. So
yeah, I thought it looked black. It looked darker blue, didn't it? In the images on Instagram when you posted them to me, it looked like a dark blue. It's very hard to pick it up on that sample, though. So.
Yeah, and then you see it in natural light, and it's got like a metallic sparkle to it, and that's where it starts to look a bit purple. At least I thought. So we've gone back to the drawing board.
So, did you pick sepia brown as the color?
No.
Did you pick tangerine as the color?
Nope.
There you go.
I'll tell you though. Would you like to know?
If you want to tell everyone, yeah. I mean, I'm guessing there's going to be people who watch your channel listening to this podcast. Do you want to announce it?
I do. I hope so. In fact, I sort of teased on my podcast that I dropped just a couple of days ago that I listened to it. Yeah, I was going to wait until today to tell people.
I thought that was a trick. I thought that was a trick, James. I thought you just say that and then we just don't announce it. Then everyone listens to the podcast anyway. We wouldn't do that.
I'm a nice straight shooting guy.
Yeah, I know.
So we have settled on a color. So the three partners, myself, Patrick, and Steve. Steve has basically washed his hands of us for the time being because he really wanted to get it done by Labor Day. He works in education, and so he's gone back to work full time now. His summer's over.
Okay.
So he's like, guys, just get on with it. So the color choices really come down to Patrick and myself, and we are both big fans of blue, even though I'm a Liverpool supporter, and that's heresy because blue means Everton and Liverpool play in red.
Red,
But I've always been a big fan of blue. So it's a shade of blue. It's not a Porsche OEM color, but it's very close to one of the 996 and 997 blue variants, which is like an aqua color.
So it's aqua blue metallic, or what's that color that they did? Not sapphire blue, because there was sapphire blue, and before that there was another blue which was similar to sapphire blue. And then there was, I forget, is it aqua blue metallic? Is that what they call it?
It's very similar to aqua blue metallic, but it's unique. We wanted a unique color, so it's close to that color. I will flash up in my next video that's going to be released after this podcast goes live. I've got like a half-second flash of the paint itself so people can see. But we're calling the paint color Sharkskin Blue.
Sharkskin Blue. So it's actually a brighter blue. So it's based on those original brighter blue sort of...
That's right.
Colors. I know the color you mean. I think I know the color you mean. That sounds good. I think it's better, actually. I mean, we haven't actually explained to people who don't know about the 996. So the 996 was a silver originally, right? And the that's body, right. The paintwork was a bit rough. It needed to be, and that's why you're having it resprayed, which I still don't understand how you can afford to do that because a respray is very expensive, but... unless it's cheaper in Minnesota, but a respray is an expensive process and I'm guessing a very stressful process too, until it's done.
You know, at Costco you can get great deals on spray paint in the cans. So
really?
You know, we just bought a load of them and shake it up, spray it on.
You just do what Magnus Walker does, where he just paints a 914 himself in his own house paint or whatever he does, spray paint, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it looks like house paint.
Yeah, exactly. He's Magnus Walker. He can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, when I was a kid, when I lived in the country, people used to paint cars with house paint. It was great. You could see them painting these old cars. They thought it was very funny. Really? That's Australian country for you, James.
You Australians.
But I think what's nice about the 996 is you got the wheels you got, the Fuchs wheels. Are they original Fuchs or they where did those wheels come from? Did you buy them new?
Bought them brand new from a specialist wheel store in California. And I forget the brand. I'll have to send you the detail of the brand afterwards. But yes, they are replicas essentially. Or at least they are inspired. Yeah,
because the Fuchs ones are very expensive, aren't they? The original Fuchs are crazy prices,
we paid,
I think.
I think it worked out to be, I don't know, $500 a rim, something like that. Which
that's not bad.
A 996 rim and they look fantastic. They really look great on the car.
They really do. I think your calipers and your wheels are a really good combination. And I guess it's important to get the color of the body right so it works well with those calipers and with the wheels, right?
Exactly. Yeah. The one thing that I hesitate on is whether the wheels will work. I think the blue and the orange are going to go really well together. The blue and the orange and the black, I think will work together, but we'll see.
So the interiors of 996s when they're like 16, 17 years old are a bit rough usually. The center plastic console is probably worse than the 997. People who haven't really treated it that well, there's lots of scratches. So are you intending on doing anything to the interior of the car?
We are, yeah. I mean, minimally, we need to repair one of the bolsters on one of the chairs, which is worn through a little bit. The leather is worn through. Generally, the condition of the interior is actually pretty good.
Right. For
a car that had as much exterior damage as this one did. And that was primarily hail damage as opposed to like major problems with the paint. Okay. It's pretty nice. I mean, it's just a basic black interior with leather seats and a few leather trim areas here and there. But it's the carpet really that we want to change the most.
Okay. Original carpet, or are you going to do something different?
We're going to do something different, and it's partly because I really just dislike the carpet trim they put in the 996s and the 997s for that matter. It's like 70s shag pile disaster carpet. I really don't like that.
The carpet that Carbone does from Poland, the stuff that they do for the air cooled, I don't think they do it for water cooled, but those carpets and the mats that they do at that store are very, very nice. They're very, very nice. I never know I don't know if they do them for 997. I mean, he may if you asked him, but they're very. They do the mats, but I don't know if they do the full carpet. But I would look at those. And he has also the very good shifter as well. I mean, you can get it from other people. Steve bought one of those Carbone shifters. It's a very, very nice shifter. And you can also get that shifter, Steve just found, on Carbone. They only have it with the brushed metal rod. And it just fits into the 996, 997. He also does it in a black finished rod as well, which is not from Carbone, which is direct from the guy that makes it. Who's got a website. I could send you the link if you wanted that. But that's a very nice thing to do. So you're not doing Pepita inserts? You're not changing the interior? You're not going to do anything like that?
We had sort of picked out a couple of fabrics that we were going to work with to change the door panels. So we were going to replace the carpet on the lower bottom, the bottoms of the doors with a potentially like a houndstooth kind of finish. And and we were maybe going to change out the center of the seats, like a lot of people have been doing recently certainly with 997s. But I think we're going to wait until we see what it looks like with the paint and the calipers and the wheels together, because right now we've got like just a plain black interior, which might actually work to our benefit considering the colors that are going on outside.
With a brighter color. Yeah, true.
Yeah.
And you're going to get rid of it pretty quickly, are you? You're not going to keep it for a long time after it's finished?
I don't think we've thought that far forward, to be honest. We're not in a rush to sell it, and we're not, expecting to make a ton of money from it. But I know that we're certainly going to want to do some driving. We're going to try and track it, I think. So hopefully if we can get it back before the snow comes, we'll get to take it to the local racetrack. We'll make some driving videos. But, give it a few months or maybe 6 months. I think it'll go.
So I'm guessing that your regular viewers on the YouTube channel and people who are just discovering you now, they're probably going to be interested in the cost of this project, on how much it cost you, what you pay for the car, all up total. And are you going to do a video about that? Is that something that's going to come up?
It is, yeah. We wanted to wait until we actually finish the car so we know the sort of true total all-in cost. And we'll be very transparent when we sell it, and not sort of, try and hide how much money we make or lose if the sale price is more or less than what we're asking for. But we will talk about that in a future video, yeah.
Are you going to try and sell it on P-Car Market or bring a trailer, or are you just going to sell it in a different way?
Again, I haven't thought that far forward. I've heard a lot of good things about Bring a Trailer. I was thinking about maybe doing a live YouTube auction and try and do something completely different and auction it off myself. I don't know. But what's pretty cool is before we even sort of previewed and talked about the concepts of what the car was going to look like, I had a couple of people in the US that have contacted me saying, if it's within this price range, we want it. I'll buy it from you straight away. Just let me know when it's ready.
Fantastic.
And then since previewing and actually showing the car for real and working on it, I've had another couple of people. So there are about half a dozen people interested in it already before seeing the finished product. So I think we'll figure out what's the best way to sell it. But I did get quite a few people after my 997, not angry, but certainly disappointed that I didn't tell or give anybody the opportunity to buy my 997. I just sold it.
Right. Yeah.
And the person who ultimately bought it was one of my viewers who tracked down the person I sold it to, made an offer, bought it, and got it.
But I guess you don't think about that. I wouldn't think about that a viewer would want to buy your car. You know what I mean? I probably would do the same as you. I would just sell it privately I wouldn't actually announce it, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, that's probably what I do with my 991 and certainly what I did with
my
997.
That's YouTube fame, see? You forget. You forget how long it's been. All right, so you were talking about, James, just one other, I know you've got to go soon and we're almost at an hour, but so you said you want to do some drives in the 996.
Yes.
I guess in COVID has canned all your drives. You had a drive planned this year, didn't you? Weren't you going to go somewhere in the summer? That's obviously been canned.
Yeah, the Rennsport Dragon Rally in North Carolina, Tennessee, that was right when the pandemic kind of kicked off, March, April time. No, it was June. Sorry, but that got canned. I think the reason we cancelled that actually was just because of so many people were planning to go, and we were 20 guys sharing a cabin. Didn't feel like a sensible move. I'm actually planning a trip to either the East Coast, and I'm going to go and basically invade Nick Murray's home and kick his door down and make a video with him.
Oh, really? Fantastic.
If I can get to Connecticut. But I want to do a four colors tour. So I'm either going to try and do the East Coast, or I'm going to head over to the Badlands and into South Dakota to see the sort of the Black Hills and Mount Rushmore. Get the drone up.
And this is in the 991? This is in the 991, right?
If the 996 is ready and I can spend 20 hours driving a manual 996...
So will you take the boys with you? The boys, as in the boys of Project 996, with you, or were they?
If they can make it, yeah. But I'm guessing it'll just be myself.
Because that'd be some great videos.
Yeah. I'd like to do something like that. So we'll see. But I am planning a road trip at least by myself in the 991 at a minimum to do some drone work and get a nice sort of full tours video.
That's nice of Nick Murray to open up his house to you. Let you stay?
I think what that means is he'll meet me in a parking lot with witnesses.
Yeah, see you later. All right. What else, James? Anything else you'd like to talk about before we go?
Yeah, I want to know about you, Michael. I
Me?
want to know when. Yeah, come on. You're in London. You're in Bahrain. You've got a 997 in Australia. We, the Michael Bath fans, want to know when the next 911 is going to show up. And I'm placing a bet that it's going to be a Macan, or it's going to be another 997, and it's going to be in Bahrain. So, come on, spill the beans.
The thing is, though, honestly, James, is the thing with Bahrain is I did intend, I changed my mind, and then I changed my mind again that I would get one in Bahrain. But because of the current situation, I don't know how long we're going to be there for. So that's why I'm hesitating with the Bahrain thing. It's hell not having a car there, not having a 911. It really is. And I know I get a bit of flack at the moment because people say you don't put any more videos up, but it's hard, as you know, it's hard to make a video about your Porsche if you don't have your Porsche with you. So it's a little bit difficult. And I'd love to make more of that content. I've been invited on a drive next year through Europe with Nick from the UK and his friends, which is tempting. I kind of toss up the idea of buying a left-hand drive 911 and storing it. This is another crazy idea. And storing it in London in some storage place for, I don't know, $250 a month or whatever, because there's no parking in our building here that we can use. And then traveling through Europe and using it for drives in Europe. So get a left-hand drive so it works, and then travel through Europe. So I like the idea of that. People are not very familiar about the Middle East, but the Middle East, especially in around outside of Muscat in Oman, all the mountains and all the roads, they have fantastic roads and fantastic scenery and great driving roads. And it'd be a great country. And the Omanis are very lovely people. And Oman would be a great country to get a 911, normal 911 or whatever, and do a drive through that country. It would be fantastic. So that's something that's always in my head. But about a 911, I was talking about this on the podcast today with Steve. I do want to get an air-cooled. I do still like an idea of an air-cooled. And if I still kept the 997, I'd still like the idea of a 912, even though they're very slow. I like the experience of it, and if you can get a good one. And I'm obsessed with looking at them on Bring a Trailer and P-Car Market and everything like that. Crazy. But then, I think if I had to sell the 997 and just say I sell the 997, which I don't really want to, but I think about it, would I get an air-cooled? You know what I mean? And just have an air-cooled for a while. Enjoy the air-cooled experience like a 964 or 993. But they're a lot smaller. They're a lot smaller. 964 probably smaller than the 993. So, but nothing set in stone, nothing really decided upon. Like I said, if Bahrain was more stable, I would definitely get a 911 there. Okay. And they're not that expensive. They're They're like US prices. They're not Australian prices.
Yeah.
So, except there's a lot of red with red interiors. Like I keep saying, it's always like double red, which scares me.
Well, that's good for my Liverpool, my team.
True supporter,
Michael.
True supporter.
And my brother lives in South London, and he has a garage which I think is unoccupied.
Oh,
Maybe
really?
you could strike a deal with another Michael in South London.
Anyway, I'm thinking about it. Okay. I think that's it. So Project 996, that's still going on your channel. People can go to your channel. They can still see all those videos. There's plenty of videos there. Like I said, James has been doing this for the last over 3 years. I forget. I don't even know how many videos do you have on your channel, James? 300, 200?
I haven't counted, but it's definitely a couple of hundred.
Yeah. So if you haven't been to Autoamateur on YouTube, check it out. Also check out James's website, autoamateur.com. Lots of great T-shirts, parts for your 991, 997. No parts for 997, is there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've neglected the 997.
991 Brotherhood only on autoamateur.com. But anyway, thank you, James. Thank you for being on today. I really appreciate it. It was a good chat.
You too, mate. Really good. Enjoyed it.
All right. Thanks for listening. Thanks, James. Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye for now.